What exactly did Jimin do to make Jungkook really shocked and unable to say anything? What evidence makes the entire army around the world speechless in 1,000 languages? Find out in this suspenseful narrative. Leave comments, like, and subscribe to keep getting exclusive news about BTS like you've never heard before. What would you do if the person you trust the most suddenly made a decision without warning, leaving a trail that changed the entire dynamic of trust, maybe even friendship? That was the question that hung over the minds of millions of ARMY when this news first broke. Not just a minor issue. It's something that slices to the heart of a relationship that has always seemed unshakable. Jimin and Jungkook, the two BTS members who are known to be close, protective of each other, and often show compactness in front of the camera, suddenly became the center of a whirlpool of emotions, mystery, and speculation. But what exactly happened? The news first appeared through a live broadcast that initially felt ordinary. Nothing unusual. Jungkook appeared with his trademark smile, small jokes, and warm greetings to the fans. However, a few minutes later, his expression changed. And it's not a change that can be hidden. His gaze seemed blank, his smile disappeared, and he had time to turn his face away from the camera for a few seconds. ARMY, as usual, caught the detail on the fly. Something's not right. Shortly thereafter, a video clip went viral. The cut showed Jimin talking to a staffer backstage, but it wasn't the content of the conversation that shocked the public. But it was one small act Jimin did that was accidentally recorded by a security camera and then leaked to the public. In the footage, Jimin appears handing over something, an envelope with a serious expression. No smiles. There was no warmth as usual. Even the staff who received the envelope looked confused and nervous. Why, then, has the envelope become so important? Many speculated, but an unnamed internal source whispered that the contents of the envelope were documents that should not have come out of BTS's private space. Documents related to Jungkook's personal decision, and worse, the decision has not been communicated directly to Jungkook himself. That is, Jimin went first, alone. Questions began to arise. Is this a form of betrayal? Or is Jimin forced to do something because of outside pressure? Pressure from whom? HYB? Management team? Or someone from the past who has been silent all this time? When Jungkook learns of the contents of the envelope through an unplanned route, his reaction is one of silence. No screaming. There was no direct confrontation. But those who watched him closely described one thing in common. He was in shock. His hands clenched into fists, his body stiffened, and for a moment, he didn't move at all. What if it's not just about the usual paperwork? A few days later, Jungkook's public schedule was abruptly canceled. The concert was canceled. The long-awaited podcast was postponed without any apparent explanation. On the other hand, Jimin seemed to be doing his usual normal activities. Although there was no denying that the look in his eyes stored heavy pressure, the public is divided. There were those who defended Jimin, considering him a victim of internal games. There are also those who believe that Jimin has crossed the line and must be held accountable. But amid that fog of speculation, one thing that makes it all the more confusing is the appearance of an old photo from last year, showing Jimin and an important figure in HYB's management talking one-on-one at a fancy restaurant. The meeting was never reported, it was never announced, and it suddenly became relevant now. Is there a connection? The mystery deepened when one of the Korean music reporters, who doesn't usually participate in celebrity gossip, decided to create a long thread on the social media platform, mentioning that he had evidence that the relationship between Jimin and Jungkook had been strained since 6 months ago. He mentions that there are profound principal differences that trigger emotional distance. But if so, why do they still look familiar in public? What's really going on behind the scenes? The next day, protect Jungkook and trust Jimin simultaneously became global trends. ARMY is divided into complex emotions: anger, confusion, fear, and curiosity. But the situation escalated when one of BTS's former staffers wrote this sentence in an anonymous comment that was deleted shortly after it appeared. If you know the contents of the envelope, you will understand why Jungkook cried in the room alone. The sentence exploded. His screenshots spread like wildfire. Comments full of theories are popping up. Some say the contents of the envelope is a letter of resignation. Some say it was an exclusive contract for Jungkook's solo project, which was sabotaged before it was announced. But the craziest theory came from someone who claimed to have seen part of the document. He wrote, "It wasn't just a contract. It contained recordings of Jungkook's private conversations that no one should have but himself and one other person, and somehow, the recordings were in Jimin's hands. If so, the question is, how did Jimin have it? And why did he give it to the other party? This is where it all becomes more than just gossip. It becomes a matter of privacy, trust, even integrity. Did Jimin intend to hurt? Or does he just want to protect? But from what? And why should it be like this? When Jungkook finally appeared again in a short live, his face looked tired. He did not name names, did not explain details, but his words were just one sentence that left all the army speechless. Some wounds cannot be sewn, even by one who once held the needle himself. The comments immediately led to new speculation. Is that a good thing for Jimin? Is it a recognition that the pain is not from an outsider, but from someone very close? A few days later, an unexpected report came in. HYB announced an internal audit of its artist's personal data security system. Without naming names, they stated that it is possible that the violation of the distribution of personal documents occurred through persons directly involved in the sphere of the artist. This statement was perceived by many as a hint that they no longer cover this issue. However, to date, Jimin has not issued an official statement. He appeared only once at the airport, looking down, wearing a hoodie, and refusing questions from reporters. But his expression can't lie. There's a cut. There's a load. And the most disturbing is one question that continues to resonate among the fans. What happened to their friendship? Is this really the end of the trust that has been building for more than a decade? Perhaps. Only the two of them know the answer. But one thing is certain. One small act, one envelope, and one silent decision have changed everything. And now, the whole world can only wait, while wondering, is this the beginning of the biggest split in BTS history? But the question now increasingly leads to one deeper and disturbing point. Is it really just about one document? Or is this just the surface of something larger, darker, that they have been successfully hiding from the public all this time? Someone from HYB's inner circle, claiming to be a former employee of the artist management division, leaked information that made the temperature in the fandom instantly rise sharply. He claimed that the conflict between Jimin and Jungkook had been triggered by differences in career vision since 2 years ago. Furthermore, this insider mentioned that Jungkook once made a special request to the management so that his solo project would not involve anyone from the members, including Jimin. The request, according to him, was secretly rejected by the top party for commercial reasons, and it was precisely behind the scenes that Jimin was offered the role of a secret collaborator in the project without Jungkook's knowledge. Imagine the sense of betrayal that Jungkook might feel when he learns that the project that he considered his own completely turned out to be secretly entered by the people closest to him, not only without permission, but also with the blessing of management, which should be a neutral party. And when that internal cooperation document suddenly leaked into his hands through an obscure path, complete with Jimin's signature on it, everything collapsed. It's not just an ethical issue. This is a professional betrayal. And even worse, it was done by someone he thought was like a brother. The question is, why did Jim do it? Is it because of the pressure from HYB? Or is there really a personal ambition that has been tightly closed behind a smile and a sweet hug in front of the camera? Some began to bring up Jimin's old interview from 2021, when he mentioned wanting to be known not just as part of a group, but as a standalone artist. At that time, the statement was considered natural. But now, the sentence is seen as a puzzle piece that begins to fit in place. Is it possible that all this time Jimin secretly felt overshadowed by Jungkook's incredible popularity? Jungkook, though often humble, has always been a big magnet for global fans. His songs, his performances, even his personal activities are always trending in a matter of minutes. On the contrary, Jimin is often perceived as more emotional, more artistic. However, what made things even more heated was the emergence of an anonymous account on the Korean platform that disseminated a transcript of a conversation between two individuals believed to be part of Jungkook's project creative team. The transcript states that one of the members insisted on joining the project under the pretext of maintaining the group's image in public, even though the lead artist, allegedly Jungkook, had already expressed his rejection in private. The transcript lists quotes that give goosebumps. If he doesn't want to look selfish, he has to compromise. This is BTS, not a solo show. The quote was strongly suspected to be a statement from Jimin or his management. But who really knows? Surprisingly, after the leak spread, the account disappeared. All his posts were deleted, but the screenshots have already spread to the international army community. And what makes the atmosphere even more unfavorable is the implied statement from HYB management that does not deny, but instead states that all members have the freedom to process within the agreed corridor. The statement only confirms that something is indeed happening, and most likely, everything is already out of their control. Jungkook reappeared a few days later in an unscheduled short broadcast. He looks thinner. His voice is not as firm as usual, but the words he spoke were very sharp. Sometimes the ones you think are protecting you are the first to stab you when you let your guard down. Those words were considered a form of anger that he finally could no longer hide. And not a few fans noticed that after the broadcast, Jungkook deleted several old uploads involving warm interactions with Jimin. Is this a symbolic form that he wants to cut off the traces of their past? Or is this just a momentary emotional overflow? Meanwhile, Jimin has not appeared in public again. He was not present on radio broadcasts that were supposed to be part of the promotion of music programs. It also does not provide clarification or explanation. There is only speculation and little bits and pieces that make the situation even more smoldering. One of the most controversial is the emergence of short clips from BTS's past rehearsals. In the clip, Jimin appears to be talking to Jungkook in a raised tone. Audio that was not heard is now successfully clarified by a fan who claimed to use an audio enhancer device. In the recording, Jimin is heard saying, "You always wanted everything for yourself, as if we were just companions." The clip immediately spread widely, and public opinion immediately split. Some say that Jimin has been holding back the feeling of being eliminated. Some replied that he was experiencing mental stress so that the phrase could not be considered a true expression. But whatever the reason, that sentence has already broken through the defensive wall of BTS's image as a harmonious group. Fandom is becoming increasingly unstable. The international fanbase community began issuing official statements to calm the situation. But some have already felt disappointed. They feel betrayed, not by a professional decision, but by the illusion of togetherness that has been believed to be intact. In a recent interview, one of the music producers who has worked for BTS projects stated that personal conflicts between members are inevitable if each of them has started walking on different paths, even though their flags are still one. That sentence, though diplomatic, implies that what happened between Jungkook and Jimin was not a single incident, but rather an accumulation of differences of principle that were never truly resolved. Now all attention is focused on the next step. Will Jungkook make a direct and open statement? Will Jimin end up explaining everything from his own point of view? And more importantly, can their relationship still be repaired? Those questions continue to haunt the minds of fans. Every day, new trending topics appear. But there is no definite answer. All we know for sure is, something is broken. And the damage was done through no fault of outsiders. But because of the decision of the closest people, this is not just an ordinary split. This is a wound that may never heal completely. And the question is now, is the world ready to see the dark side of harmony that has so far only been perfectly visible on the surface? Anger is no longer just a silent pit. Up emotion, it has turned into an unstoppable undercurrent, overflowing into public spaces, touching the millions of hearts that have believed in BTS's behind-the-scenes harmony. But behind the glamour, smiles, and perfect choreography, there's now a bitter truth that can no longer be covered up. Something inside the world's most beloved group is cracking it. And it's cracking loud. A few days after Jungkook's scathing comments were broadcast live, the public was again shocked by another leak. This time in the form of a private chat that is believed to involve Jimin and one of HYB's high executives. The chat, which was removed shortly after it appeared on the Korean community platform, showed Jungkook discussing the decision, calling it too individualistic and potentially damaging to the team's branding. More painfully, in one of the chat pieces, Jungkook's name is referred to by a term that implies personal innuendo, the golden boy who forgot who raised him. Many consider this chat to be proof that Jimin not only participated in management decisions, but also actively cornered Jungkook in internal discussions. Army reaction? Emotional outbursts. Not a few feel that this is betrayal in its most real form, even more painful than just an ordinary conflict. This is a character attack. But what made the situation even more controversial was the appearance of a comment from a South Korean entertainment industry columnist, who boldly stated that The relationship between Jimin and Jungkook has been unhealthy for a long time. He even claimed that during BTS' last world tour, the two were often secretly separated by managers in order to prevent confrontations. This statement reinforces the theory that all their interactions on stage, hugs, smiles, eye contact, may have been a play on preserving the group's image. Then, if it's all acting, we've all been fooled, a truth that makes many people furious not only because their friendship seems ruined, but because of the public lies that have been served over the years. Thousands of fans began to redig old videos, looking for moments that they previously considered sincere, but are now viewed with suspicion. Even their iconic embrace during their final concert in Seoul, which used to make everyone cry, has now been called a fake hug by some fans who feel betrayed. HYB herself still chooses silence. There is no clarification, no apologies. In fact, they were even more attacked when it became known that they sent a subpoena to several large fan bases who were considered to be spreading slander, even though the fan base only republished leaks that had gone viral. Instead of calming the situation, HYB's legal move made them look panicked, as if they were trying to shut up everyone who dared to reveal the truth. But what sparked the most public outrage was when an independent journalist released transcripts of an off-record interview with a longtime BTS staffer who resigned a few months ago. In the transcript, the staff mentions that this conflict has actually been at its peak since the beginning of the year. There was even a heated argument between Jimin and Jungkook in the training room, not only about working together on the project, but also about who felt the most sacrificed in the group. The transcript contained a sentence that is now being repeated on social media because of its emotional effects. If I didn't exist, you wouldn't even be anyone today. If I'm nothing, why are you afraid of me stepping on my own? Those words are devastating. Not only does it show the existence of a huge ego that has been covered by the brotherhood branding, but it also implies that the love between them has turned into a cruel competition. When Jimin's broadcast was finally released a few days later, his expression was different. He looked paler, more careful in his speech. But unfortunately, instead of calming, his words made the situation even more fiery. It says, "Sometimes we have to choose between honesty and loyalty. I choose silence because I appreciate what we once had." The sentence implies many things. Is he keeping a bigger secret? Does he know something about Jungkook that could shake things up if he opened his voice? And this is where a new wave of reactions begins. Fans began to speculate that this conflict goes deeper than just paperwork or project cooperation. Some say this has to do with Jungkook's decision to move out of the dorm, choose his own life, and move away from management control. Jimin was disappointed that Jungkook had hidden something important that had an impact on the group's plans, something the other members didn't even